everybody. We're going to start slightly earlier, and then if there's anything that you miss, you'll be able to watch our recording off the IBBC website. So I'd like to welcome everybody who's online, and particularly the panelists today. Just starting off, we're going to have Padraig Khudairi, who is the editor of Iraq Business News, will be giving us a short overview on tech in Iraq from his perspective. That will be followed by Laura Khudairi from Iraq Venture Partners, who invest in early stage startups in Iraq in particular. And we'll be talking about the startup market and also the issues and challenges that has, and to see what solutions might emerge from that. I think we may also hear from Laura about one or two of her projects that she's invested in. We also got a special guest today, which is Hossam Dara, who works for SAP. He's Chief Operating Officer in the growth markets, and I believe he's going to be talking about digital literacy and also the work that SAP does in terms of sustainable business in Iraq and the area. So we're looking forward to him. SAP are also members, which is great. Then we're going to be talking to Muhammed Shamal, who is an expert on agriculture tech and water tech, which obviously are two very key areas in Iraq at the moment. The use of drought and reduced water availability is causing big problems for agriculture, but there may be some interesting solutions to that. We're hoping he's going to log on fairly soon to join the panel. Then after that, we go to more the education area. Yesterday, for your information, we had a whole day dedicated to education, and we looked at universities, skills, and various areas of Iraq and what can be done to upgrade and modernize Iraqi education. But here we're going to have two exponents of that, Stirling Education, Muhammed Canbaloglu, who works for Stirling Education and delivers online teaching, and also teaches teachers to become more tech savvy, as well as working with the KRG and government areas as well. And then finally, Mr. Ben Muziek, who should be logging on later, from Unihouse Education, who's not only doing online training and skills, but also formulating new, very advanced services and online learning in AI, big data, and robotics, etc., with the University of Kuwait. So some very cutting edge things here. But without more ado, by the way, I'm Ashley Goodall. I work for the Iraq Britain Business Council. You can find more about us on the website in iraqbritainbusiness.org. We'll be showing this video to follow. And beyond that, all the other work that we do across multiple sectors. Today, we're embedded in the conference where there are about 200 people, a lot of government ministers, Central Bank of Iraq, finance, industry, and also tomorrow's a whole day based on Basra, which will be about oil and gas and energy, amongst other things in industry sectors. So it's a whole big area looking at the whole sectors across Iraq. And the objective here of the tech group is to try to bring the idea of modernization into Iraq, to inspire people, to educate people, to help them to consider how they could be leapfrogging and developing their industries in the future. And as we know, tech, particularly in the UK, is a very, very dynamic part of the economy. Probably at least 10% of it now employs tens of thousands of people, and there's no reason why Iraq shouldn't be equally as good in the years to come. Enough of me. I'd firstly like to introduce Padraig Khudairi from Iraq Business News. Padraig, I hope you're there. Can you hear us? Aha.
Yes, loud and clear, Ashley. Thank you.
Over to you, Padraig. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashley. Yeah, when we discussed tech at the last IBBC forum in spring, I focused very much on the entrepreneurs and the startups and all those exciting areas that Laura is going to be giving you a lot of great information about in a few minutes. But someone said to me afterwards, what about the public sector in Iraq? Because, for better or worse, a major part of the Iraqi economy is state-run, and it's such a huge part of the overall picture. And the use of technology in Iraq's public sector is lagging far behind what we would see in more advanced economies, and that's to be expected, I suppose. But two factors that contribute to that are overemployment in the state sector and also a lack of investment in technology to improve productivity. And those factors go hand in hand and they feed off each other, because there's no money for investment because we're spending too much on unproductive jobs, and the jobs are unproductive because there's no money to invest in the tech and the training that they need to make them more productive. And it's a huge problem. The government's white paper on this says increased spending on the expansion of the public sector did not translate into improvements in its productivity. Labor productivity in Iraq was about a quarter of the level in 1979. And that's a paper written about 3 years ago. So, I mean, that's a shocking statistic. But there are some very welcome islands of innovation to be found in the Iraqi public sector. So, for example, just this week, the Ministry of Finance announced that it had made significant progress in automating the customs and tax systems with the help of the UN. And you can read more about that on Iraq Business News. The United Kingdom and the World Bank are also working with Iraq's National Data Center to develop a digital transformation project. Huawei are involved in a project. UNDP is involved in another project. And I won't list them all up. There's also a very significant one, the government portal as well, which is up and running now. Although I've never been able to actually load the website, but I'm reliably told it is working. Similar situation in the Kurdistan region, where we've seen automation of the driving license system and the pension system. And just recently in September, they opened a new data center in Erbil as well. So, those are examples of tech progress in the Iraqi administration, but it's, you can't simply throw tech at a problem and expect everything to be okay. You have to consider the environment that it's operating in. And, it's not all about knowledge and systems and technology. It's also about culture and expectations and things like that. And, while there are some wonderful and very conscientious people in the public sector in Iraq, it's also fair to say that many of the organizations lack a culture of continuous improvement or a burning desire to deliver better services. At least this is what Iraqis tell me when I talk to them about this sort of thing. And also in Iraq, there's an ever-present problem of corruption, and that can be mitigated by tech or it can be facilitated by it. So I'm sure you've all read about the recent theft of $2.5 billion, that's billion with a B, dollars, from the bank account of the Iraqi tax authorities. Now, according to Ahmed Tabakchali, whom we're delighted to have as an expert blogger on Iraq Business News, that was a result in part of outdated systems. So let me just read you what he said. He said, specifically, the absence of coherent revenue and expenditure management policies and systems, i.e. a public financial management PFM system, combined with the prevalence of decades-old paper-based systems, makes it impossible for the government to monitor its finances and in particular its cash management operations. He goes on to say the Ministry of Finance operates without an integrated financial management information system, IFMIS, which electronically links budget planning, budget execution, accounting and reporting of all government entities. The MOF has a tenuous control over government entities' expenditure and only a partial knowledge of its cash balances. Now, this is shocking stuff, really. There's another example from Professor Frank Gunter, who wrote a paper for the IBBC last year on corruption. He says the Federal Board of Supreme Audit suffers from a shortage of quality staff and has been plagued by outdated technology. So there you have those two things playing hand in hand again. So clearly there's a technology deficit in the public sector, and that's causing very serious problems. And I know an Irish company has been working with the Ministry of Finance, for example, to scope out what's needed to put these systems in place, but it's going to take a very long time for that to get up and running. And then on the other hand, you have things like the key card system, that's QI card system, which was introduced to prevent ghost workers and those sort of scams in the public sector. But according to some sources, it ended up being a key facilitator of salary fraud. So as in all other areas, you have to see tech as a double-edged sword. You have to use it appropriately and with proper consideration for things like security and integrity and so on. But there's a crying need for modern, efficient systems in Iraq's public sector, and huge benefits to be gained from properly implemented technology. And I think there's an increasing recognition of that fact amongst everybody involved as well. So that's basically all I have to say on it at the moment, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Padraig. Really interesting. And I know that the UK government increasingly is using tech to interact with the citizens. So it's almost about how you have a relationship with your government through technology. I'd just like to ask Hussam Dara here from SAP, whether you'd like to comment on that and the point of view, because I think you very much work with the public sector and in Iraq, and any comments you have on that, what Padraig's saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ashley. Actually, we acknowledge the deficit in technology and technology literature in Iraq, and to tackle that, actually, there are 3 points that currently we are working on with public sector and private sector in general, and even with universities. Simply educate the local talent. What we're looking for is, yeah, it's sometimes nice to outsource to from the different regions resources, but also you need to develop the local talent, because that will help more and more in having sustainability in adopting technology in public sector and other sectors also. So that's number one. And I believe we have programs, we call it young professional programs. We have joint study programs with the universities where we teach our systems to local young professionals, because we believe those are coming in. The second thing is having the local partners, having local regional implementers of technology that can help the public sector, because we all know how the tendering process is, right? The tender will be released, local partners will submit into it. Hopefully they will win. Those are local. They will outsource some of their resources out from different regions. But again, having enabled local partners is something is important, and that's what we're working on currently, is enable local talent. And I'm happy that, to announce that we have more than 5 to 6 local, very professional partners in Iraq operation, and they recently won a big project with the Ministry of Telecom. So things are moving forward. And the third thing I believe is also, and that's something we notice in mainly in emerging markets. In mature markets, it's very difficult to adopt new technologies because of the legacy investment they have, whether it's a mainframe or even the talent itself, even the professionals, right? But in a market like Iraq, it's a green field for technology, and it's receptible and can receive a lot of new state-of-the-art technologies, whether it's data center-related technologies or cloud-related technologies. But I believe what we need in public sector today is the regulations for the cloud usage. As you know, cloud is being implemented currently globally. There's a lot of move and migration from on-premise to cloud. And it's important for the local government to publish clear regulations on how the cloud will be adopted in Iraq. Data sovereignty, where the data should be, what kind of data should be hosted. Because we know the big players in cloud are Amazons, the Microsofts, the Googles. They don't have data centers in Iraq, right? And they are not yet operating in Iraq. So we need to find the common ground and rules and regulations and have the right policies where we can adopt our latest the state-of-the-art technologies in public sector.
Interesting dichotomy there between, on the one hand, you want some very local activity. On the other hand, you've got very macro level things. So it's bringing those two together, which I guess you can help with.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to come to Laura Khudairi from Iraq Venture Partners. Laura, hello.
Hi, Ashley.
You've been on one or two of ours before. Looking forward very much to hearing what you're going to say, particularly looking at the early stage development in Iraq for tech and startups. Over to you.
Yes, it's a very exciting time in the Iraqi ecosystem. Still a nascent ecosystem, but there's a lot happening. And just, I guess, to give a bit of background, my name is Laura Khudairi. I co-founded Iraq Tech Ventures with my husband, Muhammed Khudairi, in 2018 to angel invest in Iraqi startups and connect them with other investors. And we've had such an exciting journey. Recently, we've we've partnered up with 2 other really strong ecosystem players, Innovest Middle East, which locally has the Rawad Al Iraq programs and initiatives, as well as Omar Al-Handal of Al-Handal Group, and who co-founded the station. So it's a really strong group. Together, we formed Iraq Venture Partners to create co-investment vehicles. And the purpose of that is to address the funding gap that exists in Iraq. The ecosystem is really interesting because you have a lot of entrepreneurs starting out with money from friends and family, money from their past work experiences, money from donor-funded programs. There's a lot of donor-funded initiatives, but there's little funding after that. And so Iraq Venture Partners is really there to invest in market-validated businesses that have launched and that are earning revenue. We also look for technology-based businesses that are scalable, have high growth opportunities, because that's what we've noticed attracts attention from VCs and larger pools of funding. We want to make sure that the entrepreneurs that we back have future sources of funding in the future. We don't want to see these companies die. And so the market, I'm sure everyone has seen the venture market explode in the region. And what is unfortunate is that a lot of that funding does not reach Iraq. I think last year there was maybe in total the venture activity in Iraq reached 20 million. And I'm probably rounding up there. But in the UAE, it reached over 1.4 billion. And the UAE has a much smaller population. The demographics for Iraq are so exciting. Young population, 98% mobile penetration. More than 50% of Iraqis spend more than 5 hours on the internet a day. So the time for Iraq is now. And I think the challenge is getting people excited about venture who aren't already in Iraq. And in recent years, we have seen a lot more activity and a lot more exciting businesses that we want to invest in. So I'll stop there, Ashley. I don't want to speak too much, but I can go on.
Well, I'm very happy for you to carry on. And
yeah.
It just struck me that's pretty overwhelming numbers in terms of people on mobile.
Yes.
What's the view of the telcos who have that distribution? I mean, are they supporting it? Do they have the infrastructure for that?
What has been great is to see in recent years the activity of the telcos getting more involved in the venture scene. Korek has led an investment in TipTop, which is a quick commerce and grocery delivery company in Kurdistan, which was awesome. AsiaCell, Zain, they all do really great initiatives locally. They have innovation hubs, they sponsor programs, they award grants to founders. So it's a very exciting time. But still, what we need is more private sector equity investment, and so it's been a challenge, frankly, getting regional VCs to look at Iraqi deal flow. And that could be for a number of reasons. Iraq has, as we've mentioned, some challenges when it comes to supporting the private sector. It's very difficult to register a company in Iraq. They have a local ownership law where 51% of a company, a local Iraqi LLC, needs to be owned by an Iraqi entity. So that's a huge red flag for investors in the region that have much more stable and supportive governments supporting the private sector, such as Egypt, Pakistan recently we've seen a lot of regional VCs invest in Pakistan and Saudi. So yeah, comparatively, Iraq is not as attractive, despite all of those positive demographics that I was talking about earlier.
I don't know if you picked up from the conference today, but there seems to be much more integration of Iraq in the local economy. The Saudis are definitely setting up investment funds to go into Iraq. Abu Dhabi has got, I think, 10 billion they're looking at to invest in Iraq. So everyone's re-engaging with Iraq. So presumably local money will be there, finance. Where do you think it else could come from that it's not coming from? Do you have any thoughts of who might invest in Iraqi startups that possibly aren't at the moment?
So we've seen a lot of interest from Jordanian VCs, and I can't wait to hopefully see those programs and initiatives that you just mentioned in the venture world. We haven't seen any big deals yet. We've only seen a handful of VCs actually participate in some rounds. So I think Totters had a regional VC, several regional VCs and international institutions. But other than that, so it's very, very good news to hear that those programs are coming underway.
I was involved in the UK setup scene in about 2010, which seems like an eon ago. And the same was true. It was very hard for people to get investment. It was family money, some foundations, a bit of government money thrown in. It was all very much bootstrapped and getting through. But now, of course, London is a massive center for finance, and there's plenty of money to go around in tech. So it may be a matter of time while you're building credibility, and suddenly the gates open and change. Do you think there's enough entrepreneurs at the moment in Iraq to attract enough money? I mean, are there enough people doing it?
I think so. I think sometimes you see there's really two buckets of entrepreneurs that we see. We see a lot of young entrepreneurs fresh out of college or university, and they don't have a lot of work experience, but there's this entrepreneurship out of necessity. There's a huge unemployment problem in Iraq, and so they turn to a lot of these amazing upstream organizations that are donor funded to work on their projects. And so maybe they've noticed an industry problem within their field of study, but they lack real world experience. And then the second bucket of entrepreneurs, Bassam Al-Attiyah from Al Sadia is one of those entrepreneurs. They're seasoned entrepreneurs. They've been working in Iraq for many years, and within their field of expertise, or even outside of their field of expertise, they've noticed opportunities. And so that prowess that allows them to create systems and hire teams that really that know how to execute locally on the ground. And so I think what is so cool is to hear from Hossam, and some of these other companies that are working on strengthening their programs for youth, giving young people opportunities to educate themselves on proper business practices and technology and how to use it in a business. So I'm very excited. While there's, so to answer your question, there's a lot of entrepreneurs. Some of them, they tend to fall in one of those two buckets. We're seeing increases in both, which is very exciting, but we hope to see more young students get educated by great companies like SAP, and then go back and start their company and their startup based on processes that work, based on industry challenges that they've identified over years of work experience, and they'll just have a much better time fundraising. They'll have a better time attracting capital and running their business, full stop.
Yes, it's reducing risk. And two areas. One, I think I see Bassam in the audience. I know there's a lot of work going on with the universities. Has that developed quite a lot of interest in tech startups? And at the same time, the idea of companies mentoring and developing entrepreneurs almost effectively like their outsourced R&D production wing. Is that something that's also on the up? Can you see that increasing, or does that still need to be worked on?
I think across the board, we hear rhetoric from a lot of institutions, including universities, about how to get more involved in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, which is so great. But I think that those internships and those work experiences are going to mean a lot more, just because it's not theoretical. It's very practical experience of day-to-day working in a multinational company, understanding the importance of processes and technology and business. But that being said, there's great work being done by universities. There's also great work that happens in between university stage, such as the work of Baghdad Business School, other programs from donor-funded organizations. And so, for example, Baghdad Business School is trying to help young graduates become better candidates for companies like SAP, other multinationals in Baghdad. Because what they noticed was a lot of times those companies can't hire local Iraqis because their English levels aren't strong enough, or just their work experience isn't there. And so a program like that is also trying to make Iraqis more employable.
Thank you. Yesterday we had an IBBC Education Day with universities, skills and training people all coming together. In fact, Muhammed was there, weren't you, Muhammed? And I think what next year would be great to have you talk about tech and mentoring. I think that'd be very helpful to bring that into the equation as well. If you wanted to ask the audience, what do you need? Obviously, you need investment, etc. But what do you want to ask people to do as a consequence of hearing you now?
There's two things. If you have a company that's operating in Iraq, please develop an internship program so that more young Iraqis can get that work experience that they need, that exposes them to challenges and opportunities in an industry so that they one day can be strong entrepreneurs. The second thing is, if you are interested in angel investing in Iraq, please come to us or any of the other great organizations in the ecosystem. There's a lot of talent, and it's just incredibly difficult for those entrepreneurs to get funding. So you can really make a difference. Or if you don't want to give disposable income when you angel invest, mentorship is a great opportunity and a great way to give back to these entrepreneurs who have a lot of challenges.
Thank you very much, Laura, and I'm sure everyone will want to rush towards you very quickly. Thanks a lot. And that's from Iraq Venture Partners, which can find you on the web, I guess.
Absolutely, or LinkedIn. We're there as well.
Thank you. Excellent. Thanks very much. Now, I'm going to go back to one of the big beasts now. Mr. Hassam Dara, again, thank you for your earlier interjection. I'm going to hand the floor to you now to talk about what you're doing, particularly in digital literacy and other sustainable things. Over to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Simply, if we talk about digital transformation, right, and I just want to build on what Laura mentioned about sustainability and talent and having local talent in Iraq, and that comes with my ask. If you're deploying any digital transformation program, mainly you're deploying latest state-of-the-art policies and processes into your business, and you're looking to enhance your own business. So simply, it goes hand in hand with change management, right? Change management means having people being educated, people being receptive, people that accepting new technologies. And that is a very important part. We've seen in the past, SAP is a 50 years old company, and we've been in the region for more than 35 years now. And you hear a lot about big projects failing, big projects actually being successful, big projects being late in going live. It's mainly not because of technology. It's because of people and people knowledge. So it's very important that we educate so we can have sustainable business. It means what? Means that whatever I deploy, I use. Something that we measure in SAP after go live is utilization of our systems. And we want it all to be above 90%, if not even 99, if not 100%. If you invest, we expect that you will get your return on investment mainly from people actually utilizing the system that you deployed. And this is an area that we stress on it. And it's mainly people, change management, people using the system, people actually receptive. We mentioned Ministry of Finance before. We mentioned the corruption, the leaks, and that. And mainly, if you look at the hacking and the leaks worldwide, it's mainly people related. It's not system related. It's not a fault in the system, rather than people actually passing on information or people, opening gateway to some applications. So that's why stressing on the education is very important. In SAP today, yes, we have two programs, as I mentioned before. The Young Professional Program is mainly we take over students from the likes of Baghdad Business School, hopefully. We train them on finance, on procurement, on HR, on industry applications, on the industries we are in, and we give them back in the market. And this is for free, by the way, right? And we give them back to the market. What are they going to be? Entrepreneurs doing their own companies, or they work for our customers, or they work for our competition. We don't care. But we give them back to the market because this is our commitment to the Iraqi government and to the Iraqi country as a country. So that's one program that we have. And the other program we have is the mutual study program with the universities. So we partner with universities, we give them our curriculum, and we help them with the materials and the contents where they educate their students, and their students will get, and once they graduate, they will have the knowledge needed in the market. And hope this will plant the seeds needed for the technology adoption in Iraq.
Can you say what you're currently working on in Iraq? What is the footprint that you're working on?
Well, in each country we come in, we look at big infrastructure projects because SAP is a transformation technology. Simply, if we're talking about Ministry of Finance or we're talking about central governments, when you have a unified government resource planning, when you have a unified tax system, that's what we have in most of the countries here in the region. We adopted the same in Saudi, we're adopting the same in UAE, in Qatar. Qatar government runs on SAP, the Saudi economy runs on SAP when it comes to water, electricity, airline, central bank, oil and gas. So what we go to usually is we go to the major industries, and today in Iraq it's oil and gas and public sector. Those are the major industries we are operating in, and I have to say we have the footprint needed and we're growing.
And that really brings me to the thought that we have today. People talk about infrastructure and oil and gas and finance, but tech is really the new infrastructure, isn't it?
Tech is the new infrastructure needed, and the technology is there. The adoption needed is there. And I believe the Iraqi market is ready. It's a green field for us.
You were talking earlier about very localized training of entrepreneurs or your partners in particular. Can you talk a little bit more about how you deliver training and what is available to people if they want to engage with you?
Simply for the training required, we have mainly on-site trainings. That way, we fly people into our premises, right? Or we have the virtual. It's been virtual for the past 2 years, unfortunately, because of the pandemic. But we are now trying to allocate the investment needed so we can actually invest in having the people on the ground, just for some logistical difficulties. So those are available, and each and every 3 months, we launch a different program on a different technology. So if, for example, you need the procurement officers, right? Young procurement officers who understand procurement technology, processes, and supply chain, and how to adopt, how to launch RFPs and work on B2B transactions. That would be a program. Then HR related, right? Recruitment and handling HR systems, handling HR applications. That's another area that we also, that would be another 3 months. And then finance, right? Treasury, and so on. Manufacturing processes, oil and gas related sometimes. We have applications, for example, can be complicated as digital refinery itself. So these kind of programs comes every 3 to 4 months, and depends on the talent we find in the market, because the recruitment will happen for the future programs while other programs are running. So it depends on what we see in the market, we acquire people in, and we design the curriculums needed. And sometimes our customers comes to us asking for a certain talent, and that's where we design programs for them.
Very interesting. So it's the professionalization and modernization of companies and countries.
Absolutely. If you look at the end result of this, because I'll give you an example. When we started this program in Saudi, almost 2012, we've trained more than 40,000 resources. That's the amount, that's the number. And a number is growing. And those people, actually, they're not working for us. Some of them not working even for our customers. Some of them have started their own companies and growing now. They're VPs and CEOs in some of the companies. So you plant the seeds and you hope that you will see the results in the future.
That very much goes back to what Laura was talking about, working with, mentoring with bigger companies so the graduates get expertise. What is your position on graduates and mentoring startups and the areas that Laura might be working in? What's the interchange there?
We do have programs. Actually, we have a company called Venture.io, which is an SAP company, where we invest in startups. Unfortunately, we're not yet in the region, right? That company is not yet in Iraq, right? Mainly due to rules and regulations, but hopefully one day they will come when we see the opportunity, and we're happy to collaborate. We can put some ideas.
Have we just seen a business deal? A potential business interaction, the big exchange. Fantastic. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you.
I just want to, at this stage, before we go into the education bit, and I'm going to admit it, but we don't have someone online yet. So I don't know where he is. He may have got lost. Anything could have happened. So I'm not playing for time, but I would like to say, would Padraig or anybody in the audience like to field a question to, either Laura or to Hossam at this stage? No. Looks like, oh yes, Sissa. Who are you, please? Yes, by all means, and then Padraig after you, sir.
So my question is about just from looking at the digital businesses in Iraq, which one are, I'm not very close in this, so which one are promising or have made a good progress so far, all the digital businesses that in any sector, just interested to get your view.
Absolutely. I think the most out of all the industries, we see a lot in the e-commerce space. And a lot of and all of these businesses just arise from day-to-day problems that Iraqis are having. And so a lot of times too, we'll see a lot of dual-sided marketplaces, meaning they're connecting users with service providers, for example. So as an Iraqi, I can't find someone to help me with my plumbing issue. So there's a platform where, called 7 Professions that tries to connect users with a high quality plumber in their area, for example. So we're seeing everything, because there's such a lack of digital services. Another interesting thing we're seeing is that there's a lot of opportunity still because they don't have the Amazons, they don't have Alibaba, they don't have all of these big, players that exist in more developed markets. And so in the B2B space, SAP is entering, but it's been very interesting. We've seen a lot of startups come up recently with B2B solutions that are, not an entire ERP, but they are an invoice management and accounting system, for example. They're trying to take, what is largely offline in the commercial world in Iraq and put it online to make more organized businesses, to streamline their operations. So in short, we're seeing a lot from all industries, and it's because there's a lack of multinationals in the space, but equally at the same time, we're seeing the SAPs and we're seeing Noon, for example, from Saudi, regional players become interested in Iraq as well. So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. I hope that helps answer your question.
And when you say Iraq, do you work for the government of Iraq?
So I'm chairman of a group of companies that is working in 5 diverse sectors.
Thank you. Now, I think, Padraig, you might have had a question, and sorry to have cut you off earlier, but if we can bring you on again. Thank you.
That's fine. Thank you, Ashley. I'm just curious to know, again, from the interaction of the state sector with the whole tech area and so on as well. It's a question both for Laura and for the gentleman from SAP as well. If the Iraqi government could make one change or do one thing, make one significant change to laws or to regulations or whatever, what would you wish for? Christmas is coming up, so if they could do one thing as a Christmas present from your perspective, something that's within their gift to do, obviously, what would it be? What would you pick?
I'll go first. It's a tie. I have two wishes. The one, I guess the biggest one is making registration easier. Right now, in Kurdistan has tried to do this, but the federal government has not. So the commercial registrar in Baghdad, if they made it easier and shorter, and ideally digitally, make it a digital process to register, and cheaper, I think that you would see a lot more entrepreneurship, right? What happens now is a lot of people wait to register because they can't afford to, and they haven't launched their business is pre-revenue. And so we don't see a lot of deals because we can't invest in them because they don't have a formal entity. And so I think that's something huge. The other thing that they could do to encourage foreign investment and more injections into the private sector is remove their 51% ownership law that makes it very difficult for foreign shareholders to invest and support Iraqi entrepreneurs and Iraqi businesses in general.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, why make it difficult? What's behind that? Do we know? Just legacy?
There's a lot
or
of
just...
it's a lot of bureaucracy, and I think getting stamps and signatures at the different offices there could be a corruption element as well. You know, you have to pay, and there's a lot of fees too. So it's a very expensive, tedious process. And there's also no nationwide registration. So if you're registered in Kurdistan, it doesn't necessarily mean you can operate with your Kurdish registration in federal Iraq. Usually people in federal Iraq can operate in Kurdistan, but even within Kurdistan, I've had entrepreneurs tell me that they were registered in Erbil and they had to re-register in Suleimania, for example. So if they could have one nationwide registration, that would also help the process.
It's not asking for a lot, is it really? Yes.
Sure. You asked for two things, so I'm going to ask for two things, right? So actually, I have two wishes, right? Wish number one is to have one digital transformation strategy for the country adopted by the highest level in the government and cascaded down to all, having unified procurement for the government, having unified HR and employment processes and systems, and having unified finance system. So you can stop the leaks, you can control, you have a better management of your government spending. That's wish number one. Wish number two, actually, it's on the legal side, okay? Ease your legal regulations to allow international companies to operate. You know, for international companies to come in and sign mega contracts on Iraqi law sometimes is very difficult. So that kind of flexibility is needed.
I mean, on the one hand, the government's always saying to us, come and invest in Iraq. On the other hand, you know, they're kind of protecting the local businesses, or something's going on that confounds that. I mean, they're scared of overseas companies coming and taking over. I don't know, what do you think the problem is behind it?
I think it's just legacy and maybe sometimes a trust in international companies. So they, and I understand fully that they're trying to protect the local partners. That's why we empower the local partners, and we would like to go behind them in most of the cases. But sometimes in big transformational projects, you need to go direct. And I'm sure there is a way to do it, right? There are some, but we need some flexibility from the government.
And Ashley, just to build on that, it's not an uncommon law, that local ownership, you know, the 51% ownership law, these protectionist measures are not unique to Iraq. Up until last year, the UAE had that same 51% ownership law. The difference is, well, for mainland entities, they saw the business case was clear, and through their experience with free zones and seeing how much that added, you know, how much foreign investment, how much value that added to their economy, it made the case for them to drop that protectionist measure. But I just wanted to point out that, you know, like Hassan mentioned, there's legal workarounds, side agreements, things you can do. But if we just look at the UAE as an example, they've seen it. They had that exact same law, and the economic argument was made that it's an archaic law and it doesn't actually help the economy.
If you allow me to add one point quickly, because in all our discussions we somehow ignore the citizen, right? The citizen of Iraq. When you bring competition in, when you bring international companies to operate directly in, it's the benefit at the end, because you'll have more competition between international and local. Local will go up to the international standard and try to compete. And that by itself brings a lot of traction in the market in terms of competency, in terms of services, the quality of the services needed. Even if a startup coming up and there's a local company and they have to compete with, look at Uber and Careem, right? Careem managed to compete with Uber to the point where Uber acquired Careem. Same with Souk.com and Amazon, right? So it's good to get the local up and skilled, but at the same time, allowing international companies to come in and operate freely will help the local market and will help the citizens eventually.
It's a trade-off, isn't it? And
absolutely.
I mean, the UK, for example, is a good example of a pretty much open market where we don't have many of our own industries, but everyone comes and operates there. Our car industry is entirely foreign, for example, and the income that we get from overseas income and businesses is enormous. So it does work. And imagine if there were 10 SAPs working in Iraq with all the extra people that get training and development as a consequence of that. It would be hugely beneficial, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. And even I will be more than happy if my competition comes to Iraq.
Yes.
Right? If I have 3 or 4 competitors in Iraq, that would be great, because we're all competing, which means we even compete on the resources available.
This gentleman here. Sir, yes. You say who you are, please. Yeah. Thank you. So I think we probably come to the end of that general discussion. I'm not seeing a couple of the panelists online here, so I'm sorry about that, because we had Mohammed Shamal, I think, unless he's hiding somewhere in the technology here. He's not going to be speaking. Aha! Where are you? I can't see.
Well, I was listening. Sorry, the calendar invite was for 4:30. There was a bit of confusion in my calendar.
Fantastic. Well, I'm really pleased you're here. So I just thank the current panelists very much indeed. Please stay around, because I'm sure we'll want to hear from Muhammed. Muhammed, you have worked very much in the UK Agri Epicenter, which is probably world leading in terms of technology, in terms of agriculture and water usage. And I know that you are independent consultant now, working in Abu Dhabi for Silal, looking at water and technology. We'd love to hear from you as to the challenges that Iraq has, which is probably similar to Abu Dhabi, and what needs to be done to address those. I'll let you speak for a while. Thank you. And then maybe at the end we could talk about carbon credits.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. And apologies, because there was some kind of confusion in my calendar regarding the timing of the session. So I am Shamal Mohammed. I'm a director at Agritech at Silal. Silal is one of the companies part of ADQ. We're helping the local farmers here in Abu Dhabi. So we have 900 local farms in our business. So we're working with them and helping them with the new technology. So I think, as you mentioned, Ashley, in terms of the challenges facing Iraq now, and probably is going to be similar or maybe worse in the future, is more around, the scarcity of the resources and using and utilization of the resources. And I think that's where the technology can play a role. So what we do is, so we work with the local farmers, bringing technology that can improve irrigation, for example, improve the cooling, minimizing the impact on the water resources, and also increasing the production and be able to replace some of the dependency on the import. And I think it is very similar sort of scenarios in Iraq as well. So if you look at it, there is a lot of dependency on the local, on the regional food imports, especially on a fresh sector. So I think there is a potential there for utilizing some of the technologies, like we working with many medium tech and high tech greenhouses, where you can control the environment more effectively and more efficiently. Looking at things like hydroponic, for example, bringing technology that can block the heat and minimize the need and the demand for water. But we were looking at some of the seed and seed development and the technologies in the seed, like gene editing, for example. So we kind of look at it a bit more comprehensive, and I believe that the challenges in Iraq is one is as the colleague mentioned, there are some fundamental issues around the policies, procedures, regulation, but also in terms of the capacity and capability, and more importantly, a long-term strategy for different sector, including agriculture. And I think the resources in terms of natural resources as well as human resources are much more available, but need that long-term thinking and strategies, and especially around soil and open field cultivation, a bit more opportunities there as well.
Mohammed, you say 900 farmers in Abu Dhabi. That's amazing. They're not old school farmers, are they? Or are they all high tech farmers? What's the nature of farming these days?
Right. Well, it is very traditional farmers. Kind of typically they are between 1 or 3, 4 hectares of in terms of the size. Mostly it's a combination of greenhouses, net houses, and open field cultivation. However, some of the initiatives we started this year was of deploying IoT sensors in 100 farms. So we're trying to demonstrate the value of some of this technology in order farmer themselves, but also their neighbors, their colleagues, and the people within the sector to think about, sometime investing in some of this technology might seem expensive to start with, but actually the payback in terms of reducing the cost of irrigation or cost of fertilization is going to be really something substantial. So we actually working with a very traditional farmers, but also we have our own farm in a line. We have a 650 hectares where we can add a bit more higher technology solutions, and we're working with commercial partners. We're working with public sector partners in order to create that sort of an ecosystem for innovation and creating a pipeline of solution for farmers and for the grower.
You're talking about protecting the amount of water evaporation, for example. I mean, in say Iraq, is obviously the same problem. How can you? I think you mentioned something like 90% reduction in water evaporation. Can you explain a bit more about that and how that would work?
So, I mean, if you look at the irrigation system in Iraq, as far as I'm aware, it is still quite traditional, low in terms of efficiency. So they still using the open channels for irrigation. I think we need to move away from this type of systems and then bring in something for, like, for example, pivot irrigation is much more efficient because the amount of water you use, the crop can get a significant benefit. Here in Abu Dhabi, mostly we're using drip irrigation, which is much more efficient and minimizing the evaporation significantly, because if you have that mass of water on a surface of your field with the current sort of a temperature and heat, you obviously have a higher evaporation. So I think maximizing that efficiency is going to be hugely important. However, the other challenge is the same as here, and probably it's the same in Iraq, is the local small farmers are really not in a position of making investment in those technology. And I think that's where the government or some sort of a public-private partnership can have a role in terms of bringing some of this technology and helping farmers with the capital cost upfront for some of this sort of technologies and get the benefit, because ultimately natural resources is more important, and is important not only for agriculture, for ecosystem services and for biodiversity. As you remember, this summer and the previous one, there was a huge issues of dust storm in Iraq, and greening the country and bringing a more innovative solution to utilize the soil and water to also for agriculture, but also for biodiversity and greening is going to be hugely important.
Two things there. One is we spoke earlier about the importance of improving the soil.
Yes.
Presumably that's a relatively easy thing to do, but actually can make a big impact for the farmers. What kind of solutions might happen there?
Correct. So, I mean, one of the kind of project we are kind of working on right now is collecting and using the food waste and organic waste and turn it into a compost, apply to the soil, is good for farmers, improving the fertility of the soil, increase the production, but also increase the water holding capacity. So you have much more moisture available for the crop. It will keep the nutrient as well. But also there is an extra benefit, which is, I think, is quite important and is becoming more and more important, is about carbon sequestration of the in the soil, which is offsetting the impact of climate change. This week is the start of the COP27 in Egypt, and the impact of climate change is going to be on all the sectors. And I think agriculture in Iraq, because the land mass available and the quality of soil with a low carbon level, has more potential for sequestrating more carbons in the soil, which will help farmers, but also help offsetting some of this greenhouse gas emission, which will be hopefully an extra sort of a stream of income for farmers, as some of the big companies, oil companies as well, they're trying to buy some of this carbon credit to offset their emission.
Before we go into that, which I think is an incredibly interesting area, the current government of Iraq is very keen on expanding and developing agriculture. And I think you may have worked with a project with the World Bank. What's your reading of what they believe needs to happen in agriculture?
Right. I think obviously there is multiple players in agriculture in Iraq, and I think most important one is the Ministry of Agriculture. They have much more influence on the farmers and the whole industry. And I think there are different ways they can introduce or kind of bring the technologies into the farmers. I mean, one project we worked on with the World Bank was about the challenges facing the digitization of agriculture in Iraq. And I think, for the start, getting the right information, right data, building some sort of a platform and a system where farmers can measure and manage some of the variation and some of the challenges facing their crops or the livestock, and helping them to make better decision on, fertilizer, agri-chemical, or seed. I think that kind of maybe a simpler tool and simpler digital tool that can help farmers to be more advanced in their decision making, it will make a big difference. And I think at the moment, like any other sectors in Iraq, still most of the information and data is quite manual. There are a lot of initiatives going on by WFP and FAO and the rest of it, and even Iraqi government themselves. But I think, bringing all these efforts under one sort of a more organized and joined up program or umbrella, it would help that process a bit more quicker. And I think you mentioned the UK and UK Agritech. There are many simpler application of tools like satellite data, for example, can give you a lot of information about the type of crop is growing in Iraq for the entire country without spending a lot of money doing a manual survey, for example. And you can repeat that on a annual basis. And this is not a really sort of a new technologies. European Union has been using this type of technology for many years for sort of managing their common agriculture policy as well. So there are simpler steps we can take in order to help farmers, but also help the government to help the farmers and be more productive and more self-sufficient.
Yes, just to bring in SAP here, it's Mossam again, and maybe Laura. You've probably got a platform that farmers could use in your back pocket somewhere. And Laura, maybe you've got an entrepreneur that could help put that together.
Yes, we've seen some really creative ideas coming out from some entrepreneurs. The problem is, like you mentioned, it's a challenge getting farmers to adopt this new technology and taking on some of the risk that happens. So they try to make, probably fractions of the initiatives that in the technology that your company offers, because they can't afford to. So they'll make smaller versions of agricultural technology, and even then, sometimes it's a struggle for those farmers to take a risk, which is totally understandable considering the environment. But we are seeing an increase in Agritech, which is very, very exciting.
And from SAP side, definitely we do have the platform needed. Actually, we've deployed similar solution in South Africa, where they measure the water level in the wells across one of the counties to make sure that they have the predictions, right, with the rainfalls and what is needed for each and every farm. So these kind of solutions is easy to adopt with the technologies. It's cloud-based, so easy access for the farmers from their mobile phones. Easily they can access such a data, and they can upload data, and the sensors can upload data directly to the cloud through IoT solutions. So this kind of technologies nowadays is easy to adopt.
So
and do available.
Thank you. I'm linking you again with Muhammad here. Maybe you could have a conversation about that. If you're not already talking, yeah. The other thing is, well, we had a very interesting conversation, Muhammad, about carbon credits and the desertification of the west side of Iraq and sandstorms, and the idea of building a green wall.
Yes.
Would you like to go into a bit of that?
Well, I think, looking at, all the studies, all the projections of, coming out of from all these international conferences, the projection is not going to get better, is going to get worse. So I think what we're seeing now, and especially in this region, if you look at some of the studies, actually, the most places where the temperature goes above 50 degrees is in Iraq, Kuwait, and then Middle East in general, and probably GCC. So, and that's the projection going forwards. And then looking at some of the impact of the climate change in terms of desertification is going to be more and more. And I think now is probably the right time, or probably a bit too late, to look at that sort of a strategic program where the greening of the country, not only for agriculture, as we discussed, but maybe, planting trees. There are multiple international initiatives that encouraging countries to kind of plant in more trees, which has more benefit for the reducing the dust storms and all sort of a desertification, but also bringing and keeping the carbons in the soil will also has an impact on offsetting some of the emissions from the oil and gas sectors in Iraq, which is, is going to be there for another maybe 20 or maybe 50 years. But you need to make sure, the oil and gas companies investing in Iraq and working in Iraq has some sort of a program that can allow us to kind of create that sort of a green corridor, if you like, a green wall that can minimize that desertification and have probably a national master plan for how we're going to do this and what the sort of plant is going to be more relevant to the country, how much kind of, it's not only trees, basically. We are working with another project here looking at the native plant that grow in this sort of environment, but actually providing various different ecosystem services like biodiversity, like reducing the dust storm, like increasing the carbon sequestration in as well. So I think that comprehensive approach will allow the country to minimize the impact of climate change, but also in the same time is actually creating a lot of jobs and opportunities for the local people to kind of be part of this initiative. But obviously it requires a more long-term planning and investment as well. It's not a cheap things to do, but I think there is a lot of opportunities there.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think it's quite an exciting prospect for oil companies, the government, work for young people, re-greening Iraq, and at the same time possibly working with carbon credits from the West. So maybe there's something there together. Good luck with that, Shamal. Is there anything you'd like to ask people to do as a consequence of hearing what you're saying today?
Well, I think there are maybe a few things, starting with the soil. I think that's really important for the country, and having some sort of a national program. There are many other countries doing similar stuff. So, we do soil and water analysis for all our farmers. So I think creating that sort of a database and having some sort of a support from farmers, but also giving them tools and technologies to improve their production and increasing their quality of their products, linked with the subsidies and using the subsidies currently available to encourage farmers to adopt new technologies, and probably working with all the oil and gas companies to allocate part of the budget or the investment for something more greener and more sort of environmental type projects and activities, and that hopefully will create a little bit more activities in that sector.
Mohammed, thank you so much indeed.
Thank
Please stay around. We may well
Sure.
bring you in. But now we're going to head towards the education side of things. And following a very good conference we had yesterday, Mohammed Canbaloglu from Stirling Education is going to talk to us about the work you're doing online. What's interesting today is there's a lot of education required of people about tech, of helping and supporting skills, and education is really in the forefront for a lot of these areas to evolve further. So over to you, and look forward to hearing what you've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. I'd like to reflect back to the two important points that Laura and Hussam have made earlier. The first one is providing more opportunities for the internships, and the second one is building the local capacity. And I'd like to add the third point is integration of the education, the technology to the education, which I believe is very important. And as Stirling schools, we are trying to use our 27 plus years field experience in Iraq and Kurdistan region to integrate the technology into our schools. So the number of the schools that we are trying to implement is this 55 schools with more than 12,000 plus students. And over 1,000 plus teachers. So you can, the numbers are there, is just to point out the huge work that the Stirling schools is trying to achieve. In the past 3 years, our CEO, Dr. Amit Arizari, has set a very clear vision for us, is to implement the technology in the schools. And to achieve this, I'm very proud to say that in the last academic year, we have completed attaching 4K smart boards into our 610 classrooms and digitizing 120 laboratories. So putting the 4K smart boards alone into the classrooms, of course, is not enough. So that is why we have purchased authentic learning resources for our students to have more exposure to genuine content learning resources. And we work with the world's leader, for example, the Cambridge and Jollyphonics. And one of the challenges that we experience in the field is that the national curriculum that we are implementing lacks the technology and visual learning materials. And that is why in the last 4 years, more than 100 of our teachers have gathered together to develop rich books. And we have integrated the videos, audios to the national curriculum in federal government and Kurdistan region. So 4K smart boards, authentic learning resources, and that takes us to online learning. Surprisingly, the Generation Z and Alpha are excellent and very quick at grabbing the online learning. So actively, we've got 9,000 plus students using online learning tools. Each has his and her own account on the platforms that is provided internationally for English, Maths, and Science subjects. So far we have registered 538 digital classrooms. And during the COVID, another experience that we had is, sorry, I think I have to move. Yeah. So during the COVID-19, we've got 400 plus students experience online competitions, international online competitions, and we were very happy to see a very good success with our students. So 4K smart posts, authentic digital resources, online learning tools that brought us to supporting the students for their digital literacy. And we do have support for the digital literacy in English language. So far we have more than 5,000 students in 278 classrooms, each individual account. accessing to more than 800 level books under the supervision of the teachers. The teachers have an access to all the reports, how the students are progressing well, and we are rewarding the students at the assemblies in the classrooms, motivating them to use these learning tools in English language, and for the federal government for Arabic language, and for the Kurdistan region, Arabic language is a second language. And very recently, Stirling Education with a company had agreed to establish what we call is e-Kutubkhane, which means an online library for the Kurdish government. And Dr. Alam, the Minister of Education in Kurdistan, had recently launched the program that is empowered by the Stirling schools. So Dr. Alan, the Minister of Education, aims to provide digital books for the students in Kurdistan region. And another initiative we had brought in our schools is, after the COVID, is switching from the computer books to digitized computer classes. And we are working with a New Zealand company called Code Avengers. We implement from the year 4 up to year 12. Students have access to coding, digital literacy, computer science, computational thinking, and programming. And we have seen that the students had quickly adapted themselves. Even some of the students are achieving more than what the teachers are giving, considering the subject allocation. So far we have 376 digital classes that the students have an access. And again, our computer teachers have an access to, from our central portal, to all the reports and how the students are achieving. Of course, what we have come is some of the distractions that are happening due to the technology use. The last 2 years, we had implemented Brain Games pilot project in one of our cities. As succeeding this project, this year we have launched the Smart Kids program, which aims to remedying the online distraction and technology-related distraction that is causing to the students. And we have opened 14 labs with each 700 and plus brain games. So one lesson is dedicated and integrated to our curriculum by the maths teacher and classroom teachers who are taking students to those labs. So this is how we are supporting the students in their learning. And of course, the huge work is being done by the teachers, and they need a great support for that one. So what we are trying to do is we edify our teachers and deliver them online sessions and train them to use the technology in the classrooms. To our surprise, we were thinking that we were only digitizing the students, but when it comes to the parents communicating through the student information system, parents are being digitized as well. So we have seen that 57 so far, this is the data that I have brought from September up to October, 57% of the parents actively use our student information system. And so far we have communicated 9,000 plus assignments, online assignments to the students, which are being monitored by the parents and reported by the teachers to the students. One of the crucial points that we are trying to achieve in our school is the building professional learning communities. And by mean that we have separated professional learning communities into subject departments, because we've got young, energetic teachers mentoring the experienced teachers for the use of technology, and the experienced teacher mentoring the young teachers of the content of the learning materials. So we have created so far 58 online communities who are exchanging ideas, collaborating, creating online files, and contribution to the shared workplaces in the teams. And for that one, we have fully purchased, got the Microsoft education license and being implemented in all of our schools. We have provided 9,000 plus accounts to our students and parents. Our IT department has centralized everything to make it easy for the parents that they have access to all of our platforms through their Microsoft accounts. So the other professional learning communities is the continuing professional development that we provide to our teachers. Again, this is being done monthly. Once in a month, our teachers receive online training from the international trainers, and as well as that we have built the local capacity. Back to Husam's point, we have trained 25 of our teachers certified by Cambridge University and delivering. So last year we had delivered 120 sessions in 4 languages, and so far this academic year we have delivered 41 sessions, and so far we have archived 250 videos. Each of our teachers have an access to all these training videos available in their account. And finally, all this huge work is being implemented by our central IT department. So one of the things that, I don't know if Laura was mentioning this ecosystem, we have developed 58 dynamic corporate forms that are being used in our schools, request, scheduling, and all that. So this is another achievement. And also, the last 2 points that I'd like to make is that we have developed a web-based collaboration platform. To our surprise, in only 3 months, we had 10,000 plus visits by our teachers, which spend an average of 9 minutes. On that side, they have an access to a lot of documents that we provide for their professional learning, and as well as some policies that's being implemented by Stirling schools. And now our IT department and the Board of Education is working on the student portal, where our students will have an access through their Microsoft account to a lot of new things provided by the schools.
Thank you very much. Just 2 questions. One is, you're working with the KRG, I think, aren't you, and the governments, and you're probably one of the most advanced school units in Iraq for technology. What is the attitude? Are they very keen? Could you provide this to all schools in Iraq?
Well, I can easily say that the government is collaborating by all means with the private sectors, and a couple of projects being achieved through the Stirling schools, and I can see that through our CEO's meeting with Dr. Alan, for example, in Kurdistan region, Dr. Alan is very keen in developing and bringing technology to the schools.
And the second thing is, it appears to me that in all ways this is beneficial to learning, not just for the students, but for the teachers and for the families. So it's a very big upswing in education. Is that true in terms of impact and outcomes?
Absolutely. I mean, as all the panelists were mentioning, the importance of technology integration in all the sectors in the market, I believe the generation is coming up from the schools, not only from our schools, but I believe all the other private schools are also doing very well in the technology. So definitely there is a great benefit to that.
Thank you very much indeed. I just want to check if Ben Muziek might be online somewhere. Ben, are you in the internet here? Can you let yourself in? It's sounding quiet. Okay. In that case, would anyone like to ask any questions at all? Yes, Muhammed. Yeah, Maluzri.
We have private and international schools. There is partial national curriculum that we have to implement, for example, for the religion, Kurdish language or the Arabic language. But for the core subjects, English, science, maths, computer lessons, we are following an international curriculum. Yep, the digitalizing is also covering this is in my first slide that I have mentioned, the rich books. By rich books, we mean the Kurdish books, for example, the Arabic language books. But this is again a huge work that we are trying to achieve by our with ours, because I believe there should be a board of people being implemented to develop these books, because as a school, this is a huge work for us.
Thank you very much. Laura, yes, please.
That was such an interesting presentation and so exciting to hear about you guys' initiatives. I had a question. You had some partners listed like Raz Kids and Code Avengers. Are those international organizations that you guys are using to build the platform that you're using, or are those local companies?
These are all international companies. Raz Kids, for example, UK-based. Code Avengers is New Zealand. I Start Arabic is based in Jordan. So we bring all these intellectuals to the country to build the local capacity.
Yeah, I have a question. Since you rely a lot on the infrastructure, right? So how's the internet access?
Wow. That's a very good question to ask and very hard to answer. I mean, definitely, this is one of the biggest challenges that we have, especially at the southern part. For example, our teachers are most of the time complain about the internet use, and we try to bring the best internet possible in the city. But again, it all goes back to the infrastructure, to you guys. We're waiting for you.
Okay. Has anyone got anything else to add at this stage? Anything to say? I think we're within 3 or 4 minutes of our timing, which is perfect. So I'm sorry that we didn't hear from Unihouse. Apologies if you couldn't get on or something happened, but maybe we'll hear from them another time. So if I could thank all the panelists. Muhammed from Stirling Schools, thank you very much indeed. Hossam Dara from SAP, thank you. To Laura Khudairi from Iraq Venture, thank you very much indeed. From Padraig O'Hanley, who's somewhere in the internet in England, and from Mohammed Shamal in, I think, Abu Dhabi. So thank you all very much. This will be available as a recording, so you can watch it for as many times as you wish. And for those of you that haven't seen it, you can watch it via our website, hopefully in a few days' time. So thank you all very much, and do feel to get in touch if there's anything you want to ask, and we'll do our best to go from there. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.